Now, we've danced around it for a while here, but at some point we've got to sort of address it here. Obviously, 2017, they win the World Series. A couple of years later, the cheating scandal or trash can banging or whatever you want to label it breaks. How do you think 20 years from now, people are going to look back on this 2017 World Series title?
I'm not dancing around this. As I said, I spent most of the pandemic year making, a 6-hour documentary exploring all sorts of questions related to this. How are they going to be looked at? I think they are, quite frankly, always going to be one of those teams you remember with a black mark on them, right? Like, I think these players are never going to live this down. I think it's always going to be a part of their legacy. We look back at the Black Sox, we look back at steroid users, Pete Rose with gambling. We all know all the names throughout the course of baseball. The 2017 Astros, as talented as they were, and they were without question a World Series caliber team without having done this at all by any measure. This is going to be the headline in the history books for them. That's one of the questions or one of the themes that I've really explored significantly in my second go round, I guess, at this story. But there's a lot of different angles about, a big one was, why did these guys do this? Yeah. Right? Like, why? As he said, they were good enough to win the World Series. They knew they were good enough to win the World Series. So why does a team that's already there have to take this extra illicit step that so clearly crossed the code of ethics in baseball?
Yeah.
And yeah, sign stealing has been around forever. I get into that in the podcast. It's kind of funny, sordid history of things people have been doing since 1875. A lot of involving technology, just like the Astros did. I mean, obviously not as modern technology, but still cameras and binoculars and all this stuff. A lot of it not that different. But why did this thing blow up and cross the line, go over the edge in the way that it did? And in such a way that now, they've got their rings, in Canada, people know George Springer has done pretty well for himself, after this, and a lot of them will. But this is always going to be, I think, kind of maybe the first thing that a lot of people will think about these guys.
Yeah. Now, there's obviously various layers to the actual cheating scandal and sign stealing and all of that. There, everything from the potential of Altuve wearing a buzzer of some sort on him there to the actual trash can banging. What was more shocking to you when the news sort of first broke there? Was it the use of technology, like possibly a buzzer or some sort of signal system, or was it something as glaringly almost archaic as someone sitting in a back room banging on a trash can to try and tip off pitches?
It was really the latter. It was almost like how stupid it was, right? Like, this is the most advanced team in the history of sports as far as technology. And they were banging on a trash can to do this. Like, that disconnect, when I heard it, and I was just shocked when this athletic report came out, as somebody who obviously had spent a lot of time with the team and reporting on the team. How does this happen? How does this incredibly advanced team do this, and in such a stupid way? How does nobody know about it? How are they doing it for 100 games in 2017 or something? Mm-hmm. And, I found one person who didn't know about it for the podcast, one opposing pitcher who I talked to, but, they did it against over 100 different pitchers. And one guy was like, what is that banging noise coming every time I try to throw a curveball? So many questions. And then, of course, how unusual actually was this? How much did it help them? There's a lot of different levels to get into this. It's also a larger story about competition, not even just in baseball. For any organization, any competitive organization, what drives so many of them to go over the edge like this, to take this step that maybe they didn't need to, purely to win? And conversely, what stops other organizations from doing similarly? Or does anything stop them? Is this what everybody does?
Yeah. Now, you already alluded to it as well, too. You actually had the chance to sit down with Jeff Luhnow for the podcast itself. Now,
right.
Him obviously playing a central role in all of that, what kind of insights did he have as to what was really going on a day-to-day basis during that wild 2017 season?
He had a lot of insights, and I spoke to him for 5.5 hours. It's not all in the show,
Hmm.
but I mean, there are a lot of things that he said. One of the things that he was pretty firm on was that he didn't know about this. As unbelievable as it sounds, he said, I had no knowledge of the science healing. It was happening with the players, the coaches, the video room. I didn't know about this. I understand a lot of people might not believe that. It might seem impossible. But Major League Baseball was unable to definitively pin knowledge of this on Luhnow. And they had all his text messages, all his emails, all this stuff. But one of the things I wrestle with is that the right question? Like, yes, obviously it's relevant if the GM knew, and he should have been punished anyway. He was clearly punished severely, but shouldn't he have known, right? As the top guy in the organization, shouldn't he have had structures in place to know something like this? Shouldn't he have, when sign stealing started to become an issue, shouldn't he have laid down the law with his team, made it known that this is not something we do? Now, these things are very easy to say in retrospect. Like, it's hard to import yourself back into that culture. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there is something about this particular culture that was so focused on edge gaining, so focused on winning above everything, that allowed, this sort of bad behavior to happen. I don't think it's a mere coincidence that this happened with the Astros.
Yeah. And, when you look at how the Astros sign stealing unfolded, how the Patriots multiple scandals have unfolded over the years there
Right.
too, it always seems to come back to the people at the top didn't know. It was an overzealous team staffer or someone who was trying to, get a promotion. Da, da, da. Like, like you just said, though, how much of that do organizations really expect the fans to believe versus this is just what they need to say because they know they're going to get stripped of World Series titles if they go, yeah, we cheated, sorry, we got caught, right? Like, what sort of direction do you tend to lean towards on that issue?
um Look, like, my personal view is that this is not in the best interests of the Astros as an organization. It's not in the best interest of Major League Baseball, right? Major League Baseball being kind of, when we're talking about the commissioner's office, being kind of employed by the owners, including the owner of the Astros. Like, actual full transparency and justice here is not really the goal. The goal is to move past this as best as they can. And often, as we've seen in scandals like this, not just in baseball, but in the NFL, in business, like, the best way is to keep this contained, kind of single out a few wrongdoers. Fall guys might be the wrong word because, they're obviously not innocent in themselves, but kind of suggest that, look, it's contained here, it's isolated, we've taken care of it, and we've moved on. Will that work in this case? I mean, the Astros haven't really played in front of fans, right, since this happened. And like last year, 2020 was going to be the year of the Astros shame tour, where they were going to go around and fans were going to tell them what they thought of them. And that's been kind of delayed. And I guess we're going to get that this year with all this opening up that we're seeing around baseball. So I don't know. I'd be surprised if people have moved past it.
Yeah.
But
Well, that was going to be my next question, right?
I'm anticipating all your questions here.
Yeah, you're reading my mind right now. But like, no one would ever label COVID as a good thing. But in the Astros' mind, like, is this not the ultimate hall pass that they essentially got? Like you were saying, spring training last year, it was getting set up to be just a beanball fest all year long, and it was almost like how many. There were actually Vegas prop bets of how many times will Houston Astros batters get struck this year, and da 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 da. So, and that's nothing to say of the fans booing them out of every stadium and yada yada yada. So, you know do you think that people are still upset enough about it if that there are fans returning this year that we will sort of see some version of that shame tour? Or do you think we're now far enough removed from it and enough has happened in the world that you might get the odd smattering of things here or maybe their first trip through town, but then it's largely baseball as normal come June type thing?
Probably the latter, to be honest. I mean, part of it is that there aren't that many guys, individuals,
Mhm.
from the 2017 Astros still with the Astros, right? I mean, who are we talking about really? Like Bregman, Alex Bregman,
Mhm.
Carlos Correa, Jose Altuve, but not many others,
Yeah.
right? Like Verlander's not pitching this year. Springer's gone. Dallas Keuchel's gone. So yeah, I mean, do I think Alex Bregman and Carlos Correa and Jose Altuve are going to get hammered when they go into opposing a ball works of the year? Certainly. Uh, but yeah, probably not as much as they would have last year. I don't think that they would have made that trade like COVID for not getting booed. That's a bit
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if there was any team that was like, it's not so bad, we're not playing in front of fans this year, it's probably the Astros.
Yeah.